Have you ever heard of stink therapy?
I have not.
So, do you remember the Black Plague or the Black Death?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the same thing. I think it's the same thing. Okay. So, whenever the Black Death was first going around, they thought the cure for the Black Death was stink. Because I guess they thought I guess the Black Plague was transmitted through air, or they thought it was transmitted through air.
Well, yeah.
So they thought that the stink would like kill it in the air.
Mm-hmm.
So people were instructed to do two things. One, they wanted people to move all their farm animals inside of the houses
Inside the house.
to provide the stink.
Yeah.
And then secondary, they were told that everybody in the house was supposed to fart in jars and keep it in a jar. And if they felt sick, they're supposed to open it and smell it because it's supposed to kill the bacteria.
God.
So all these people just have all these jars that they're farting in, and then when they start to feel sick, they're just like, oh, let me open this jar. Oh, I feel better now. And they close it back up.
I mean, there's two sides to that coin, actually. So there's that, what you just told me. And there's, the plague doctors with the wicked nose masks they had. The purpose of those masks?
To divert the smell?
Yeah. They would put herbs, like special herbs, and they'd light them on fire, like not on fire, but like they'd light them so they were smoking, and they just that nose would hold the herbs, and they'd just be breathing in smoking herbs. Like plague doctors would take people across like into islands where they just let the sick people die away from everyone else, and the plague doctors would have to be the ones that ferry the sick over there, and the plague doctors would just be sitting there, toasted because they're just smoking herbs the entire way through. But that's how they prevent themselves getting sick.
Like when you say herbs, are they smoking weed?
I mean, it probably wasn't. No, it wasn't marijuana, but it was just random medicinal herbs. Like any medicinal herb, fine.
So they just got like some rosemary and some parsley, and just
stuck it up the nose piece, and then just lit it.
How would like your throat would have to be so dry?
Yeah, I mean, it's a precaution you have to take because it's that or getting this deadly disease that is a death sentence if you get it.
Right, but looking back now, that had nothing to do with them getting it or not getting it.
Yeah.
So they were just breathing all this smoke for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure they didn't know anything about like lung cancer, so they're breathing all this because it was like basically
it wasn't like a massive plume of smoke. It was just a little bit of faint like steam.
It's like a small campfire.
Yeah,
they're just like constantly breathing campfire.
It wasn't like they weren't inhaling ash. It was just like steam. It was more like steam.
So wait a minute, if it was in the nose, didn't it like fog out like where they could see?
Well, no, because it's just a little bit like if they wouldn't light it on fire. It's just very, very, very faint smokiness to it. Like just like the bottom of the herbs are black and they're just emitting a little bit of smoke.
So. I've never heard of this island. What did they do? They put all the sick people on an island together?
No, they're islands. Anytime they any island off the shore of a place that had the infection, the plague doctors would take the sick people and they'd ferry them over to the nearest island and just drop all the sick people off and let them all die on the island so that they wouldn't spread the disease. So that you just get you get the disease. Plague doctor comes, picks you up, he forces you to get on this boat with him with a bunch of other sick people, and he ferries you across.
So
and then you get dropped off an island, you just die.
What if you don't want to go to the island?
You had no choice. It was either you go to the island or you die, and your body gets dropped off into like some disposal place, like a pit of bodies with a disease.
What year was this? The Black Plague?
It was 1200s.
1200s?
1200s, 1300s a month. Yeah, some of that.
Oh,
medieval.
Well, that kind of that. I mean, it's still bringing the animals in the house and smelling farts in a jar is still absolutely crazy. But if it's 1300s, that's a little bit acceptable, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they didn't have much understanding medicine back then. Like the physicians back then, their solution to everything was like, well, you have smallpox in your arm, cut the arm off. If your leg's broken, cut the leg off. If you
broke your leg, they cut it off.
A lot of times. Because they just if they didn't know how to heal it, just take it off.
Like they didn't know that it would heal itself.
No, that was consistent until like the 1900s.
They would just cut. So you break your arm.
Oh yeah.
They just cut the arm off.
And amputees were rampant, especially militaries. Like if you were a military man, there was a really good chance you'd become an amputee, because if you get your arm broken or your leg broken, they just cut it off, because they didn't understand that you have to hold it in place and it heals itself. They just kept on trying to use it, and it was unusable, getting in the way, so they just took it off.
So they're like, they have a broken leg, and they're just like, they just broke it, and they're like, ow, ow,
Yeah.
ow. Oh, it's not it's not fixed.
Like,
next day, ow, ow.
Usually, like it'd be like if it's something small, like a broken toe, they didn't mess with it. But if it was like your leg was broken and
you break your toe and they take your whole leg off, it's like, all right, we gotta get rid of the whole thing. The whole thing's bad.
It'd be like extreme. Like if your knee, like the joint of your knee was broken, like it snapped, and you had like a bone sticking out, they take it off instantly.
Do you think they understood broken bones?
They understood broken bones. They just didn't understand how to treat them. They didn't understand what to do with them. If it didn't heal on its own, take it off.
And they just never waited 6 weeks?
No. Yeah, if it wasn't like a finger or a toe, or a nose, and it just didn't heal itself, like if you couldn't just avoid using it to keep it still.
At some point, you would have to think that they were like, somebody had like broke a finger or something, and then eventually it got better, and they're like,
oh yeah,
well, hold on a minute. If the finger gets better, maybe the arm gets better.
I mean, it's a kind of a big leap from arms to fingers, because you can still use your hand with a broken finger, but you can't pick anything up or do anything with a broken arm. You just have to let that arm stay still, which was impossible because you needed your arm.
Well, here's another secret. You also can't pick anything up if your arm is cut off.
Yeah.
So either way, you can't do anything with it.
At least you don't have dead weight. At least you don't have to deal with this constant pain as it just moves around. Dead nerves.
I think I would rather have, like, just try to hold my arm still for a long period of time, because they didn't have, like, it wasn't like a real doctor that would amputate your arm. Didn't they just strap you down and saw it off?
Well, it depends. Like sometimes they just have like, rich people had physicians, physicians weren't much better, and like the military had like field surgeons. And the surgeons were just like people who had the most medical knowledge, even though that might not be any really at all. Like they might have just read some books about it. Like you know something about this. I've read a book. You're the surgeon you're the army surgeon now. So you take care of this.
So what's your medical knowledge? Well, I know that the brain thinks. Sometimes you get too much blood, and you cut off broken arms. You're hired, and then now you're the doctor.
A lot of medical industry was figuring out how to cut off limbs without killing the person, like without having them bleed out, and like the easiest, quickest ways to do it.
I am so glad we are so far past that now.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like I'm so glad we're not still trying to figure out how you can cut off people's limbs without killing them.
Yeah, and like the worst part about it was like it wasn't your choice. Like if you're a soldier and your leg gets hit by like some guy with a really big mace comes along and just clocks you in the shin, and your shin is busted completely.
Some guy with a mace? What do you mean a mace?
A mace.
What kind of war is this?
Normal war.
A mace?
A mace, not the spray stuff, but
right.
A mace.
Right. The spiky ball with a stick and you sling it?
Well, that's a Morning Star. Maces are just anything that has a handle, a shaft, a one-handed shaft, and a blunt piece of metal on the end of it, or even just a wood. That like anything that's just designed to be a blunt trauma one-handed weapon is a mace.
Oh. Wait a minute. You said they did this up to the 1900s, right?
Well, later on it'd be if you get hit by like if somebody if you get into a melee, there's a lot of broken bones. Usually, like in later on, like the Black Powder era, like 16 to 1900. If you got hit and your bone was broken, oftentimes the limb was taken with it because it'd be a cannonball. And if a cannonball hits you, you're not going to need amputation. It's going to take everything you need to get going.
The amputation is going to be done for you.
Oh yeah,
very quickly.
Lightning fast. Oh yeah.
Didn't they used to get people like really drunk to do surgeries?
Oh yeah. They'd use alcohol to numb them. Yeah, that was the best they had. And they also used alcohol to disinfect the wounds later on.
So like you're drinking it, and they're just like hold on, don't drink all that, and then they pour some water on there and drink some more.
They actually boiling wine was very, very common, which works. If you boil wine and pour it onto a wound, it works really well. It disinfects it.
Why
It
do you have to
hurts.
boil it?
I think it just helps with the concentration of the alcohol or something like that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why you boil it, but I know that you boil wine and you pour it into the wound, and it's really, really, really good disinfectant. Like it's the best thing they had to disinfect wounds.
Do
It
you
worked
pour
really
it?
well.
Do you pour it in the wound while it's hot?
Yeah. So it's scorching hot. It gives in.
That's
You
that's
hold
why that's why it
you
kills
hold them
everything.
down. Well, no, it didn't kill. It didn't kill them. It was really effective disinfectant.
No, I'm saying that's
It
why it killed
actually.
all the germs and stuff. It's because it's
Oh
boiling
yeah,
hot.
yeah. Because well, yeah, but it also because it's alcohol.
I wonder if they could have the same effect just by boiling water and pouring
No,
scalding water on it.
I
Oh,
mean it'd probably get the dirt out, but it wouldn't kill the germs because it's not alcohol.
no, the heat would.
Well, he wouldn't get all of it. He wouldn't get all the germs.
Over 200 degrees?
Well,
All that stuff's dead.
it wouldn't be the same amount. Like it wouldn't be as thorough.
Oh yeah.
No.
No, there's none of the germs are going to live at 212 degrees.
Well, the germs aren't being kept at 200 degrees. They're being splashed on. Some of them are being exposed to it extremely quickly. The germs would have to be kept in a 200-degree environment in order to die.
You sure?
Yeah. You can't just splash boiling water on a wound and it instantly just vaporizes all the germs.
I think they all go away.
No.
Well, it's not. They're not. They don't have like a boiling water spray bottle. They probably got like a big pot and they just like dump it on there.
I mean, you don't want to dump too much because it might actually like do some real damage.
Well,
Like
that's
30-degree burns.
they're already cutting their arms off with saws and getting them drunk to do it. What are they worried about? A little bit of damage.
I mean, like major damage, like 30-degree burns.
That's nothing. You just cut away the burns.
Mm-hmm.
That's like they're gonna do something to your arm. So say they pour a bunch of water on your arm, but then the water also burns your leg. So they're just like, wow, it goes, well, take the leg off too.
Like too. Mm-hmm.
This is evil. Like this one is torture, like just pure torture.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you by chance happen to know how they used to fix a stuttering problem?
No.
Though the cure for a stutter, they would cut the tongue off.
I was about to say that exact same thing.
That's because they believed that a stutter was caused by spasms in the tongue. So they said most of the time what they would do is they would start by cutting off pieces of the tongue, but they said that in most cases they would just keep cutting pieces off the tongue until there was virtually no tongue left.
Yeah.
And then once they couldn't speak, then they couldn't stutter.
Well, there you go. Problem solved.
Yeah. You're like 10 years old. You go to the doctor. You're like, got a stuttering problem. He's just like, you're all good. And you're just like, oh, you're like, you can't enunciate anything. You can't move any food around. You can't do anything because you don't have a tongue.
Yeah.
This next one, have you ever heard of rest therapy?
No.
Okay, so this one was really popular around the time, whenever this time period was, that women were starting to fight for their rights.
So that'd be 1800s? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like the right to like education, vote, all that stuff. Okay, so the whenever the women were fighting for their rights was like what years? Or what year roughly?
1800.
Like mid 1800s or like beginning?
Mid. It'd be mid, yeah.
Okay, so that's whenever this was very popular, the rest therapy. So, rest therapy was it was like 98 or 96%, something like that, women. Mm-hmm. So, whenever the women were fighting for their rights and all that stuff, those women that were fighting for their rights were deemed hysteric.
Yeah.
So, the therapy for hysteria was rest therapy, where they would take them into rooms and tie them down to a bed and make them rest.
Yeah.
And then they would literally just leave them tied up to the bed until they agreed that they felt better.
Mm-hmm.
And then by feeling better would mean not fight for your rights.
Yeah.
And that was the therapy.
Yeah. That's not even medical. That's just pushing an agenda.
Yeah. It was probably just them pushing the agenda. There's probably, I'm sure there was no research.
Nothing about that, yeah.
Like, could you imagine being like you're like all fired up about something and they're just like, you need to rest, and they just like strap you down to a table,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're just sitting there just like, hey, you can't move, can't do anything, and they're just like, do you feel better? Do you feel better? And you're just like, no, I don't feel better. Like, rest. It's like whenever you're really mad, someone telling you to calm down. Like you're never gonna calm down, except for it's like a bunch of doctors and you're just like losing your mind, and they're just like, calm down, just calm down. Because I'd never heard of any of that.
Yeah.
Like I knew that like whenever the women were like fighting for their rights and stuff, I knew they were like made out to be crazy or whatever. But I didn't know that they made them like do rest therapy and strapped them down to beds until they quit.
Yeah, I think I have heard of that. I think I've heard of. I didn't hear that. I never heard of the term, but I've heard of suffragettes being described as hysterical as a way to like try and undercut them.
Yeah, from all of these, there was a lot of that. A lot of like them deeming women being like hysteric for whatever reason, and then that was the treatment. Yeah. Because a lot of the lobotomy was women. I think a lot of the whirling chair was women.
Mm-hmm.
Women and schizophrenics, which I guess schizophrenics are mainly men. Yeah, then the rest therapy was mainly women. They I wrote this down. They strapped them to the table until their mood improved. That was what their goal was. Whenever the mood improved, then they were no longer hysteric and they could let them go. So I guess once you stop freaking out because you've been strapped to a table, then you're good to go.
Mm-hmm. Seems reasonable.
I can't even imagine how crazy people probably started going when they started getting strapped to tables.
Oh yeah.
In the video that I watched of it, they showed a room that was like probably 40 or 50 different women, and they just were all in beds, just like with a leather strap, like just strapping them down to the bed.
Yeah.
It was insane. Next, we have electroshock therapy.
I've heard of this. Mm-hmm.
They used it for people who were, I think it was mainly for people who was depressed or schizophrenic, which seems to be a big trend here of things that they're trying to cure or whatever.
Yeah.
And from the pictures and from what I saw, it looked basically just like just taking a cord from a wall outlet and they just put it on your temples.
Yeah.
And they pretty much just shock you over and over and over and over until you feel better.
Well, the premise behind it was that mental disorders were caused by an imbalance of electrical signals in the brain. Like the electricity in your brain was just out of order. Like it was just off beat, essentially.
Oh,
and
so if we add some of our electricity to it.
If we just give them the right jolts and the right increments, the right patterns, it'll just, reset it and get it to working right. Which obviously makes no sense, but I mean.
So I always say this was before this was ever invented, but they were kind of had the same principle as like the things where they shock your heart back, kind of like the same thing but for your brain.
I mean, it's similar, I suppose. Like
I guess the principle they were going for is like kind of the same.
Yeah,
it's like we'll just keep shocking them until they start like foaming out of the mouth, and then we're like, oh, you're good.
Yeah.
It seems to me like a lot of this stuff seems like stuff that they don't fix the problem. They just torture you enough until you agree that the problem is fixed. And then they use that as their research for that's how you fix it.
Or like they view, making sure that the problem is impossible to reoccur as fixing the problem.
Yeah. Like you break your arm, cut the arm off, you can't break it anymore.
Can't break it anymore.
I don't know what kind of like scientists were like doing all this type of research for all these years.
Yeah.
But like, and I mean, I'm sure what I found, I'm sure it's just the tip of the iceberg. I'm sure they probably had way worse things going on. And then all it did was make people just like, all right, I am sick of this. I feel better. I know I don't feel sick. I don't hear any more voices. I just need to get out of here.
Mm-hmm. It seems like the brain stuff is worse because like the brain's such a delicate instrument, and like it's so different from every single other organ. Like every other organ, you can just fix it using some simple method. Not the brain. You cannot do anything drastic as a brain.
Yeah.
Like the smallest little movement, gone. You're dead.
The brain just can't. You can't handle that. You can't be
Hmm.
sending 110 volts to your brain.
Yeah.